It was 7:04 a.m. when the front door finally creaked open. I was already awake. Had been since around 4:30. I didn't sleep well when she wasn't home, and especially not when she said she'd be back late from a dinner with the girls. I'd stayed up, not out of paranoia, but out of hope, the kind of quiet, persistent hope you cling to when you still want to believe the person you love is telling the truth. I heard the soft click of the door handle, then the low thud of her heels on the wood floor, except they weren't the heels she left in. I knew that sound. These were softer, rubber-soled maybe, like sneakers or slippers. I stayed still at the kitchen table, staring into a mug of cold coffee, watching a thin curl of steam rise from a candle I lit sometime around 2 a.m. to keep the silence company. She stepped into the hallway and turned the corner, and that's when I saw her. My first thought wasn't shock. It wasn't even anger. It was detachment. Like I was watching someone else's life unfold. Like maybe this wasn't really happening and I was just a spectator to some scene that belonged to another man. Lena wasn't wearing the black dress she had slipped into last night, the one with the plunging neckline and thin, trembling straps that I had pretended not to notice. She wasn't wearing the heels she said made her feet hurt by dessert. Instead, she had on an oversized, wrinkled button-down shirt, pale blue, sleeves rolled up sloppily to the elbows, the collar hanging too wide at the neck. It was clearly not hers. It wasn't mine either. She looked at me briefly. Not long enough to read anything in my face. Just long enough to acknowledge that I existed. Then she dropped her purse by the door and walked straight past me into the hallway like this was routine. Like she hadn't disappeared for nearly 12 hours. Like she hadn't missed all 6 of my texts or that single call I placed at midnight which rang twice and went to voicemail. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun that looked more accidental than intentional, strands clinging to her forehead, some matted down on one side like she'd been lying on it for hours. Her makeup was mostly gone, except for the faint smudge of eyeliner that made her eyes look almost bruised. And beneath all of it she looked raw. Not tired exactly. Not hungover. Just raw. Like someone who had come home not to hide something, but because the pretending was over. I smelled it before I saw the bathroom door close behind her, a sharp, musky cologne trailing faintly behind, lingering in the space between us. Not mine. I'd never worn anything like that. I use simple stuff, clean, citrusy, subtle. Whatever this was, it wasn't subtle. It was soaked into her shirt, into her skin, into the hallway air like a trail of evidence she didn't care to erase. I didn't say a word. Not because I was stunned. Not because I was afraid. But because something in me had already shifted. The truth wasn't something I had to dig for anymore. It was here. Standing barefoot in the hallway, stepping into our shared bathroom like she still belonged here, like she hadn't just detonated something sacred. The sound of the shower starting was abrupt. Familiar. Like muscle memory. Like this was just another Monday morning. Maybe for her it was. I sat back down at the table and stared at the candle again, now melted to the base. The flame was flickering, stubborn, small, like the last of my denial. I wrapped both hands around my coffee mug even though it had long gone cold. I stared at the door she disappeared behind and waited for a version of myself to wake up, the one who would yell, demand answers, tear the house apart in fury. But that version didn't show up. Instead, I felt something else rise up in me, stillness. The kind of stillness that settles over you when the worst has already happened. When you've seen enough to know that nothing she could say now would unsee what your gut had already been screaming for weeks. Maybe months. I replayed her walk from the front door to the hallway. The way she didn't flinch. The way she didn't over-explain. There was no guilt, no scrambling, no need for justification. Just movement. Just resignation. She was done pretending. And so was I. I thought back to the night before, the way she kissed me on the cheek, not the lips, as she left. The way she texted me around 9:30, saying, still laughing. You wouldn't believe what Tasha just said, faced with tears of joy, a message so manufactured it could have been written in a boardroom. I hadn't responded. I remember thinking at the time, it doesn't sound like her. But I brushed it off. I'd gotten good at brushing things off. The signs had been there for a while. The extra phone privacy. The vague references to team dinners that never showed up on her calendar. The makeup that became more dramatic, the lingerie that stayed hidden in the drawer unless she was going out but never when she was with me. The way she pulled her phone close when she typed. The way she went stiff when I touched her after 10 p.m. Still, part of me, the part that loved her or maybe just needed to believe I still did, kept finding ways to explain it all. Work stress. Hormones. Friend drama. Even the growing silence between us. I thought maybe it was just a phase. A cold spell. But this morning? This wasn't a phase. This was the reveal. I didn't get up to knock on the bathroom door. I didn't ask her who he was. I didn't ask where she'd been or why she smelled like someone else's skin. I just sat at the table while the water ran, wondering how long she had been waiting for the moment where she wouldn't need to lie anymore. And how long I had been pretending I didn't see her slipping away. It's strange how betrayal doesn't always come in a dramatic explosion. Sometimes it walks in quietly at dawn, kicks off borrowed shoes, and takes a shower in your house like it pays rent. And in that moment I knew something with full clarity I didn't need her to tell me. Because the story had already been told. In the silence. In the scent. In the shirt that didn't belong to me. That was the morning everything changed. That was the morning I stopped asking questions. I didn't say anything to her that morning. Not after the shower, not during the drive to work, not even when she leaned in to kiss my cheek, routine, like brushing teeth or locking the door. I turned slightly, let it miss. She didn't ask why. That, maybe more than anything, told me everything. She didn't ask. If she felt the shift in me, she didn't show it. She grabbed her bag, threw on a jacket, mine, oddly, and left with a clipped, "See you later." Like nothing had happened. Like the air didn't still reek faintly of cologne that didn't belong in this house. Like I hadn't spent the entire morning staring at the floor, tasting the silence like ash in my mouth. I waited until her car was out of the driveway before I allowed myself to move. Not with purpose, not yet. Just slowly. Like grief settling into the joints. I stood in the center of the living room and turned in a slow circle, like maybe something would make sense if I looked at it from a new angle. Nothing did. But the sense of something being off, that was sharp now. And it had been trying to get my attention for a long time. It started with her phone. Small things at first. She used to leave it out face up, sometimes forgotten, on the kitchen counter. Then it started living face down. Then it moved with her from room to room. Then came the password change. When I asked her why, she laughed and said, "You're not checking my messages, are you?" I said no. I wasn't lying. I wasn't checking them. I just noticed she didn't want me to. And then the late nights began. Work dinners. Happy hours. Strategy sessions that ran into the double digits. I believed her the first few times. Why wouldn't I? She was smart, driven, always trying to move up. But even ambition has a pattern. Hers changed too suddenly. Meetings that used to stress her out now left her glowing. She came home smelling like perfume she hadn't worn when she left. Her makeup got heavier. Her dresses got tighter. And I, like an idiot, chalked it up to confidence. I thought maybe she's just trying to feel good about herself. I told myself that. Repeated it like a mantra. But confidence doesn't flinch when I walk into the room. She did. Subtle but real. Her shoulders would tense just for a second. Her screen would darken. Her smile, when there was one, looked like it had been practiced in a mirror. And her laugh. That one really got me. There's a laugh someone gives when they're just amused. And then there's the laugh that slips out when you're lit from the inside, giddy, caught off guard. I hadn't heard that one from her in months. Then one night I walked past the bedroom and heard it. Clear, bright, reckless. Coming from the phone pressed against her ear. It stopped the second she saw me in the doorway. "Who was that?" I asked casually. "Just Tasha," she said. She was telling me about this guy she went on a date with. Total disaster. I nodded, said something forgettable, walked away. But my heart knew it wasn't Tasha. I started keeping track after that. Not obsessively. Just noticing. She'd leave the room to take calls that used to happen right in front of me. She wore that bold, musky perfume even on days she was just going to run errands. She became short with me, easily irritated by the most basic questions. And she always seemed tired. Not exhausted like someone working long hours, but like someone worn out from living a double life. I began to recognize a kind of rhythm. Every few days, she'd go out. Come home quiet, calm, sometimes affectionate in a forced way. Like she was trying to act normal, but had forgotten what normal looked like between us. Her touches were off. Her timing too precise. Everything she did felt rehearsed. As if she'd studied what being a loving partner was supposed to look like, and she was trying to perform it even though the script was falling apart in her hands. What's worse is that I didn't say anything. I didn't confront her. Not once. Part of that was fear. Not fear of her, fear of being right. Fear that asking the question would make it real. That saying, "Are you cheating?" out loud would snap the illusion and I'd never be able to crawl back inside it. The other part? Hope. Hope that I was wrong. That I was being paranoid. That I was projecting some insecurity onto her, inventing a betrayal where there wasn't one. Hope is dangerous like that. It makes you doubt your own eyes, your own instincts. It makes you wait just one more day. One more week. One more lie. It keeps you silent in rooms where you should scream. But that morning, that oversized shirt. That scent in the hallway. That look in her eyes that said she didn't have anything left to cover up. It broke the dam. The truth wasn't coming. It had already arrived. And now that I was truly looking, it was everywhere. Her laptop had been wiped of history recently. She never used to care if I borrowed it. Now she double-checked if I even glanced in its direction. Her calendar app had a new icon on it, some third-party planner she said worked better. I asked to see it once and she said she didn't remember the password. The lie came out so fast it tripped over itself. She also started disappearing on Sundays. At first, it was brunch with friends. Then it became yoga. Then a wellness circle I'd never heard of before. I asked what that was exactly and she got defensive. It's a women's thing, she said. Emotional health. You probably wouldn't get it. Maybe I wouldn't. But I understood enough to know she came home glowing, sometimes with a soft bruise on her neck she claimed was from accidentally hitting herself with her curling iron. Twice. The same curling iron I'd seen lying unplugged in a drawer all week. And then there were her dreams. She started talking in her sleep. Just fragments. Names. Sentences that didn't make sense on their own. Once she said, "No, don't, he's still up," in a whisper so low I almost thought I imagined it. But she wasn't dreaming about work. She wasn't dreaming about me. And whatever or whoever she was dreaming about, it had a tone I hadn't heard from her in months, longing. She never used to lock the bathroom door. Now she did. She never used to rush to do laundry before I got to it. Now she insisted. She started taking showers late at night after we'd already said goodnight. "I feel gross," she'd say. "Too much city air." But she came out with wet hair, red cheeks, and a blank stare like she had just erased something. And in all this, she never once looked afraid. She looked done. That was the word that circled in my head as I sat in bed that night, lights off, pretending to sleep while I listened to her quietly laugh into her phone in the living room. Not loud, not careless. Just enough to tell me she was still somewhere else. Done. She had emotionally exited our relationship long before she physically did. And I had known, somewhere deep down, for weeks. I just hadn't allowed myself to believe it. I kept telling myself that couples go through phases. That we were just out of sync. That if I was patient, she'd circle back. She'd remember how to love me. But no one comes home in another man's shirt unless they've already said goodbye. Even if they haven't spoken the words yet. And as I lay there that night, in a bed that used to feel safe, next to a woman who now felt like a stranger in my house, I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit. She had already left. Now it was my turn to decide whether I was going to keep pretending she hadn't. It was 3 days later when I finally stopped pretending. Lena was asleep on the couch, out cold, mouth slightly open, her phone balanced precariously on her stomach and her tablet resting face down on the armrest. We'd had a barely there conversation earlier that evening, mostly about groceries and an upcoming dentist appointment. It was remarkable, really, how two people could live in the same space and say so much without ever saying anything at all. I nodded and smiled and played my part. I even offered her a blanket. Then I waited. Once I heard the soft, shallow rhythm of her breathing, I knew she was out. The kind of sleep that only comes when you feel completely unthreatened. That was what stung most. She didn't even think I was a threat to her secrets. Her tablet flickered as I picked it up, already half-lit from a failed screen lock. I knew her code. She thought I didn't, but I did. It was still the same one she picked years ago, back when we shared everything, birthdays and inside jokes and passwords. She never imagined I'd use it like this. She probably never thought I had it in me. The home screen loaded instantly. At first, I didn't even know what I was looking for. Some part of me hoped I wouldn't find anything, that maybe I'd go digging and come up empty, and then I'd have to admit I was the problem. That I was paranoid, controlling, unwell. But within seconds I saw the folder. Not even hidden. Just there. Recents in her cloud gallery, set to sync across devices. Casual. Effortless. Almost like she forgot her lies had digital footprints. I tapped. The first photo stopped me cold. She was lying on a hotel bed, head tilted back on a pillow, hair down, skin glowing like she just stepped out of a warm bath. Or someone else's arms. She was wearing the same oversized button-up shirt she came home in a few mornings ago. No pants. No shame. The sheets bunched low around her hips, white and perfectly rumpled. Beside her, propped up on one elbow, was a man I didn't recognize. Shirtless. Muscular. Comfortable. His arm was extended, clearly the one taking the photo. His face was half caught in the corner, smiling, careless, and completely unbothered. Behind them, the TV displayed a logo from a boutique hotel I recognized by name but had never been to. Definitely not the place Lena said she was going that night. She had told me it was dinner at Riverbank Bistro with Tasha and 2 other girls from work. Said they needed to catch up on life. Apparently, catching up now included room service and forearms I didn't recognize. I kept scrolling. Photo after photo. Not explicit but an asterisk, mate. The kind of closeness you don't fake. Her hand on his chest. His fingers in her hair. Candids of her laughing in bed, makeup half smeared, wine glass in the background. One of them kissing, blurry, clearly taken mid-movement. All of it time-stamped. All of it recent. Every denial, every excuse, every vague story unraveled in front of me like a thread I had finally pulled too far. I stopped at one particular image, her standing in front of a mirror, the shirt hanging off one shoulder, looking straight into the lens like she was posing for him. Like she wanted him to remember that moment. She looked unburdened. Not hiding. Not guilty. I should have felt rage. I waited for it, wanted it even. Wanted to throw something. Yell. Wake her up and shove the tablet in her face and demand she explain it all. But none of that came. What came instead was silence. Cold and total. Like when a radio cuts out mid-song and all you're left with is white noise. I sat back in the chair, the tablet still in my hands, and stared across the room at her sleeping figure. She looked peaceful. Soft even. I didn't recognize her. The Lena I fell in love with used to fall asleep holding my hand. Used to laugh too hard at dumb movies and beg me to make pancakes at midnight. That Lena had faded, little by little, until all that was left was this stranger on my couch, dreaming of someone else while still wrapped in my life. I locked the tablet. My hands were steady now. The man in the photos, his name was Miles. I found his name in a saved contact on one of the photo uploads. It had geotags, 2 little data points she didn't realize were being saved. The hotel was across town, close to where she claimed to have her consulting clients. I'd always thought that job was a little vague, but I never pushed. She said it gave her flexibility. Now I knew what that flexibility was for. She was a SK***led liar. I'll give her that. She lied in little pieces. Just enough to stay believable. She didn't over-explain. She gave me what I needed to hear and nothing more. No more than that. She'd built a second life right alongside ours, one I was never meant to find. But she got sloppy. Or maybe she got tired. Maybe some part of her wanted me to know. Maybe coming home in that shirt was her way of admitting it without saying it out loud. And now I knew. Every instinct in me said not to react right away. Don't confront her. Don't give her a single inch of emotional ground to stand on. Let her wonder. Let her feel the silence press in. Let her keep guessing what I knew and when I knew it. I would not give her the stage for a performance. I made a secure folder. I backed up everything. Every image. Every file. I even took **TS of her text threads with him, small exchanges buried deep in her backup logs. Can't stop thinking about last night. Next time, I'll book the place with the jacuzzi. He doesn't have a clue. She was right about that until now. I went into quiet mode after that. Ultra calm. I cooked dinner the next night. I asked about her day. I kissed her forehead like I always used to. She looked surprised, maybe even suspicious. But I smiled and gave her nothing. Inside, I was rebuilding. Every password, every bank access, every joint account, we'd accumulated so many connections over the years. I started auditing them one by one, not changing them yet. Just understanding where the lines ran so I could start cutting them clean and sharp when the time came. I slept in the same bed as her for 2 more nights, each one colder than the last. She didn't reach for me, neither did I. I think we both knew something had shifted, but she didn't know what I knew. Not yet, and that gave me power. I wasn't going to scream or cry or beg her to choose me. That wasn't the man I wanted to be. That wasn't the man I had spent the last few years trying to become. If she had already left me in her heart, then the only choice I had left was how I walked away from her in reality. Cleanly, deliberately, without giving her the satisfaction of a scene. So I waited, I gathered, I planned, because now I had something she didn't, the truth, and I was going to use it to take back my life, on my terms. The morning after I found the photos, I stood in front of the mirror and stared at myself longer than usual. I looked the same brown eyes, same haircut Lena used to run her fingers through when she said I was too handsome for my own good. Same jawline she once said made me look dangerously trustworthy. And yet, I didn't recognize the man staring back at me. Not because I'd changed overnight, but because I finally saw him clearly. Not the version she needed. Not the placeholder she tolerated. Me. The man she had stopped seeing long before she stopped touching. And now I knew. The time for silence had ended. I didn't tell her I was taking the day off work. I let her think everything was business as usual. She grabbed her keys, kissed my cheek again, just the cheek, always the cheek now, and said, "Be good." I smiled and said, "Always." The door shut. I watched her back out of the driveway with the same detachment someone might have watching leaves fall. She was gone by 8:17 a.m. I checked the time twice, not because it mattered, but because it felt like a clock had started ticking the moment her car disappeared. By 8:30, I was at the bank. I had called ahead, said I needed to update account access and security for our joint holdings. The manager, a tall man with tired eyes and a wedding band worn thin from years of loyalty, asked no questions. I slid over my ID, verified the information, and signed the forms that removed her name from everything I could legally strip away. Next, I changed the passwords on all our shared digital accounts, streaming, storage, even the dog's vet profile. Petty? Maybe. But I wanted her to feel it. The slow evaporation of access, of assumed permanence. Every password reset was like unscrewing a bolt from the skeleton of the life we had built. Then came the storage unit. It was a clean little place 5 miles out of town. Climate controlled. 24-hour security. I paid for 6 months in advance and rented a medium-sized unit. The guy at the front desk asked if I was moving out or moving on. I gave a short laugh and said, "Both." He nodded like he understood. I went home and started packing. Not everything, just her things. It was easier than I expected. I opened the closet and immediately saw the line of dresses I hadn't seen her wear for me in over a year. The lace-trimmed tops. The perfume bottles half empty from nights she didn't spend with me. The boots she claimed hurt too much for walking but wore anyway when she met clients. All of it came down and into boxes. Labeled. Sorted. Like evidence. Like proof that someone had lived here once but didn't anymore. Clothes. Makeup. Books. Journals. Jewelry. Art prints she insisted we hang but I never really liked. The stack of novels she always said she was saving for later. I even packed the novelty wine opener she brought back from Napa, the one I now knew she had probably bought with him. I didn't break anything. I didn't burn photos or slash clothes or throw her stuff on the lawn like some country song revenge fantasy. No, I was calm, focused, each item placed gently, like I was tucking away a part of a former life. And then I called the real estate agent. We had bought the house together 4 years ago. Lena loved it on sight, called it ours before we'd even put down an offer. But I paid more. My credit, my down payment. My name was listed first on every legal page. I told the agent I wanted to initiate a title change. Sole ownership. She asked if it was amicable. I said, "It will be. She just doesn't know it yet." By the time I finished, it was past 4 p.m. The porch was clean. The boxes were stacked neatly, labeled in Sharpie. Nothing damaged. Nothing thrown. It looked like someone had moved out with quiet dignity, except they hadn't moved. Yet, then I changed the locks. I'd had the new deadbolts waiting in the garage for a while, meant to be installed someday. Someday had arrived. The click of the screwdriver twisting into metal felt therapeutic. Each turn felt like closing a chapter. The key that used to open everything between us was now useless. It wasn't until around 6:15 that I heard the familiar sound of her car pulling into the driveway. I stood at the window, sipping a cup of tea, watching her approach with the calm of a man watching a forecasted storm roll in. No surprise. Just inevitability. She stepped out of the car, purse slung over one shoulder, a small smile on her face like she was still playing house. Then she saw the boxes. At first, she just stood there, confused. Tilted her head like she didn't understand what she was looking at. She walked up to the porch and touched the top box like it might vanish if she blinked hard enough. Then she tried the door. It didn't open. She knocked. Twice. Then louder. I didn't move. She called my name. I sipped my tea. She stepped back and called me on her phone. It rang on the counter. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. I didn't listen. I knew what she would say, shock first, then anger, then desperation. From where I stood, I could see her pacing. Her fingers flying over the screen. Probably texting someone. Maybe him. Maybe Tasha. Maybe no one. She knocked again. "Drew," she called. "What the hell is this?" But I didn't respond. I didn't open the door. Didn't yell. Didn't accuse. I just let the silence answer for me. It lasted all of 20 minutes. She paced, cried, cursed once, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. I saw one old couple peer through their blinds. Another woman from across the street came out and stood on her porch, arms crossed, watching the scene unfold like a matinee she hadn't bought tickets for but didn't mind attending. Eventually, Lena gave up. She stomped back to her car, sat in the driver's seat, and stared at the boxes like they might start speaking. They didn't. She drove off 5 minutes later. And the house, for the first time in months, felt still. No tension. No buzzing anxiety. No sound of her voice explaining too little or too much. Just quiet. Not empty, but cleansed. I walked through the house slowly after that. Room by room. I didn't cry. Didn't break. I just breathed in the silence. Let it settle in my lungs like air I hadn't tasted in years. The place was mine again. Not because I'd won anything, but because I had finally let go of someone who had already let go of me. The life we had shared was over. And now I was starting to build a new one decision at a time. It didn't take long for the calls to start. The first one came less than an hour after she drove off. I didn't answer. I watched the phone vibrate across the kitchen counter, the screen lighting up with her name, still saved as Lena Rehart because I hadn't changed it yet. That little heart felt like a relic now, a joke from another life. Then came the texts. Drew, what is this? Are you home? I don't understand what's going on. Call me. Please. I watched them arrive in real time. Line after line of confusion followed by a second wave of anger. This is insane. You can't just lock me out of the house. You're being dramatic. We need to talk. When I still didn't respond, the tone shifted again, faster this time, like a pendulum swinging out of control. Okay. I'm sorry. Can we please just talk? I'll explain everything. Just give me a chance. Please, Drew. Don't do this. She called 3 more times that night. Left 2 voicemails. I didn't listen to them. There was nothing left to say that I hadn't already heard in her silence these past few months. By morning, she'd moved on to email. A long one. It started with, I know you're hurt, and ended with, I never wanted this to happen. Sandwiched between were paragraphs of tangled justification. She said she'd been confused. Said she never stopped loving me, just lost herself. Said it was emotional more than physical, as if that distinction would somehow dull the blade. I didn't reply. And that silence, that refusal to play her game, seemed to unnerve her more than anything. The next evening she came back. This time with luggage. She stood on the porch in a gray coat and jeans, hair pulled back like she was ready for a confrontation. A duffel bag at her feet, 2 rolling suitcases behind her. I watched from the hallway window, just out of sight. She rang the doorbell twice. Knocked 3 times. Then started calling out. Drew? I know you're in there. I just want to talk. I said nothing. I'm not here to fight, she added quickly. I don't even understand what's happening. Are you really doing this? She waited. Looked around. Glanced over her shoulder at the neighbors' houses, probably hoping no one was watching. They were. People always watch. After 5 minutes, she called me. Again. I let it go to voicemail. Again. Then she sat down on one of the suitcases and just waited. I'll admit, part of me wanted to open the door. Not to take her back. Not to forgive. Just to look her in the eye and ask, was it worth it? But I didn't. Because she'd lie. Or cry. Or worse, try to twist it all back into a conversation about us as if she hadn't been dismantling us one hotel room at a time. Instead, I turned on music. Something low and steady, jazz, I think. I made dinner. Boiled pasta, sliced garlic, grated cheese. The smell of it filled the house as her presence lingered just beyond the front door, muted by walls I no longer considered shared. She stayed an hour. At some point, she knocked once more, softly, like hope was running out. Then she stood up, wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, and rolled her bags back to the car. She drove off without looking back. It wasn't over, though. Not by a long *T. Over the next few days, I received a steady drip of attempts, texts, calls, voicemails, emails. Some angry, some pitiful, all desperate. The pattern was familiar: confusion, rage, apology, repeat. She couldn't believe I'd done this without warning. Couldn't believe I hadn't given her a chance to explain. Couldn't believe I hadn't allowed her to control the narrative. You're blowing this out of proportion. I made a mistake. One mistake. Don't throw everything away over something like this. Something like this. That phrase stuck with me. As if betrayal came with a scale and what she'd done didn't tip it far enough. As if all the late nights, the lies, the *Macy with someone else were just minor infractions. But what she couldn't grasp, what maybe she still can't, is that it wasn't just about what she did. It was about who she became to do it. And how far she'd gone from the woman I once knew. She started reaching out to mutual friends next. Tasha texted me first. "Hey, just talked to Lena. She's freaking out. Said you locked her out?" I responded simply. I had my reasons. Tasha didn't push after that. Others were slower to engage. A few liked posts of mine on social media, harmless things, a photo of my dog, a sunset. The silent digital version of "we're watching, but we're not taking sides." No one asked for her side of the story. And if she tried giving it, no one seemed eager to believe her. I think she expected more outrage on her behalf. Instead, she got a quiet turning of heads. People knew. Or at least, they suspected. That's the thing about living a lie, it leaks. And people notice when the air shifts. One of her friends, Dana, messaged me privately. "I always wondered if something was going on. She changed a lot." "I'm sorry, Drew." I didn't reply, but I appreciated the honesty. Lena's next move was a letter. Handwritten. Slid under the door like she was delivering a ransom note. I found it the next morning on the mat. My name on the front. Looped cursive. A little heart drawn after the W. Inside, it was 6 pages. Front and back. I didn't read it. I didn't need to. I folded it once, twice, then dropped it into the trash. Not out of cruelty, but because I already knew the script. She wanted the power of the final word. I wasn't going to give her the pleasure. Then came the guilt bombs. Late-night messages about how she couldn't sleep. How she was spiraling. How she didn't know who she was anymore. That maybe she should just disappear. A mutual friend called one night. Said Lena had shown up at her apartment, sobbing, saying she didn't feel safe. That she might do something drastic. She asked if I could come talk to her. Just calm her down. Be the bigger person. That used to be the bait I'd fall for. But not anymore. I told her to call someone qualified. I wasn't the right person to help Lena now. I wasn't her safety net. I wasn't her husband. Not anymore. And I meant it. That night, Lena came back to the house one last time. Around 10 p.m. I saw her headlights pull into the driveway. She didn't ring the bell. She didn't knock. She just sat on the doorstep, sobbing. Loudly. I didn't go out. I poured myself a cup of tea. Sat in the armchair by the window. Watched her cry into her hands, rock slightly back and forth. I think she wanted a neighbor to intervene. For someone to ask what was wrong. For me to step out and say, "Okay, fine. Come in. Let's talk." But that door stayed shut. Eventually she stopped crying. Got back into the car. And drove away. I haven't seen her since.